Nice. Good chill weekend.
Family time.
Yeah, did some family time. Didn't really do a lot, actually. It was a very chill weekend for us. It was very cool. You?
Yeah, it was good. Just hung out with at my parents' house, and my sister was in town with her family, so just did a little bit of that, and it was nice to just kind of hang out and do the Easter egg hunt. And
How many eggs did you find?
I got a couple, You start craving. You see all the kids getting the candy, and you're like, well, that looks pretty good.
Yeah, my daughter walked out of my parents with $80. I'm like,
Classic
awesome.
Uncle Danny. There's at least 20s stashed somewhere, if not a couple 50s.
There's a giant golden egg, and okay, obviously there's gonna be some real money in there, and there was.
Where were those hidden? In the mailbox?
Yeah, I think, and he might have buried one in the sandbox or something. He got into it.
That was Megan growing up, your sister. She was always getting the $20 ones. Like, dang it, Megan.
She'll be so happy you said that. Couldn't be happier. I got a cool invite this week. So I have a friend that teaches a home design class at a local university. And he asked, hey, would you do a guest lecture for us? Come in, basically do what you do on your live streams and show my students how you make a floor plan. Like, oh, sick. So I was plotting out bullet points and stuff.
At what school?
I think it's Purdue Northwest.
Okay.
He teaches architecture and home design course. I'm really pumped to do it. I've always wanted to get into consulting. I feel like that might be fun and really fit my skill set. And it's hard to sell consulting services if you've never done anything. I have zero portfolio in that realm. So I think this will be a step in that direction.
Well, at least just getting the experience of doing that and going through that motion. How do I explain this to other people?
Yeah.
And not just go through my click motions, actually talking about it and what I'm doing and why I'm able to go maybe quicker than the average person. Yeah.
Put a slideshow deck together and all that stuff. So I'm very excited about that.
When are you doing that?
That's Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
Wednesday. So pretty soon here.
Do you have to prepare for that really?
Yeah. I mean, he wants me to do my basic live stream, so I don't need much prep there. And I actually recently made a YouTube video on my design process. So I've got it all fresh in my head of what I actually do, and even some slides and stuff that I use in that video, I'm just going to duplicate and use for this seminar. Should be pretty low overhead for me, but I'm really excited to do it.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Things are going good with the businesses. We've got, our apartment business, so we're working on adding another Airbnb. So we're kind of in the middle of painting that and furnishing it, and getting that ready. You always got the concern of is the Airbnb market oversaturated in this area?
Yeah.
So that's always in the back of our heads, but part of it's, it is fun to do that and think of, unique ways to lay out a space so it really stands out when you're looking for a place to rent on the app. So that's been fun working with our designer again, who does all of our restaurants, and she's helping us with that. And
oh, that's cool.
So doing a little bit of that and just the normal restaurant stuff, just dealing with personnel issues and how do we get in the strongest position that we can be in going into the summer months, which are usually the busiest.
Yeah.
May's a really strong month typically with graduation and then just kids coming home from college and all that stuff. So
oh yeah, makes sense.
and Mother's Day is the busiest day of the year for most restaurants.
Is it really? I guess that makes total sense, but yeah.
More so, yeah. So
don't know if I would have guessed it.
I know. We never really grew up going out to brunch on Mother's Day. I never thought of that as a big restaurant day, but it is, and once we opened Le Peep, we kind of learned that, so especially for breakfast and lunch type places, it's for sure the busiest day of the year. So just kind of gearing up for that. And it's, Burger House might be more Father's Day would be busier, but those Mother's Day is still busy for those restaurants as well. So just kind of getting ready for the summer months, but thankfully out of the winter, out of that slower period. And so things are going pretty good.
Yeah. So ever since I started my career, which I graduated college in '08, but I was working even before then, there's always been a everybody's obsessed with the economy. And you see all this stuff about it's going to be great, it's going to be horrible. I think a lot of that is just people trying to get clicks. Like I don't really know any good forecasting things, or like I don't follow it closely enough to really understand. But in the event that there is a downturn, there are tougher economic times. Like we wanted to talk about today, this week, what do you do when things get slow? What do you do when it gets a little slimmer and there's not as much traffic? Like what do you spend your time on? How do you pivot as a business?
Yeah, and like you said, like the fear of that can be almost as crippling as when it actually happens, you know?
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
you hear reports of we're going to get another recession in the next 2 years or whatever, you know, just articles about that make you more concerned sometimes than it actually taking place.
Yeah.
And that's part of that's just how we're wired in human nature and all that. But it is, you know, there are certain things that we can do to like put us in stronger positions when those times come. And a big part of that's like planning and just things that we'll go over today that we've experienced when those times kind of come, you know?
Yeah. So what does some of your planning look like?
Yeah. So for us, it's so different because, you know, you compare like COVID to, just a slower time of the year. I mean, they're wildly different. So like with COVID, it was like, we were getting like PPP money to help pay for our labor costs because they were kind of encouraging you to not lay off employees. You know, we wanted to keep our people.
Yeah.
So when that happened, it was kind of like you throw everything out the window that you would normally do when you slow down, and you don't really worry as much about your labor costs because you're getting this money to like help keep all your people employed.
Yeah.
You know, whereas typically, I mean, that's kind of a one-off scenario, but like typically that's the first thing that we're adjusting is like, what are our sales at and how do we adjust so we know we're not losing money? Because like I've said in previous episodes, it comes down to labor and food costs within the restaurants.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the first thing that we would look at because it's hard to really adjust with like, we got to save a bunch of money on food because once you start, you know, purchasing different ingredients, different products, now you're potentially sacrificing quality, which we don't want to do.
Yeah.
So it really, you know, the main thing is like labor, but not just cutting, also like thinking creatively and how can we go after sales and what are some things that we haven't tried that we should try to fight for sales. So this sting isn't as bad as what we think it could be.
Yeah. Is your planning always reactive or is it sometimes proactive?
It's got to be, I mean, it should be proactive for sure. Like you want it to be as much as possible.
You know the winter's going to be slow, right?
Yeah, but it's not, you don't have to adjust too much. The conversation just kind of shifts to like, you know, trimming a few hours here and there.
Yeah.
As opposed to like a recession, it might be like, well, we used to have 4 cooks on the line on a night, and now maybe we only have 2 because it's so slow.
Yeah.
And we haven't had to experience a ton of that, you know, like right after we were pretty much done with college, like late 2000s, around, you know, 2008 or whatever, like it was, that was the last like major recession, you know? So we've had, it's ebbed and flowed over the years, but it's never been like super concerning or detrimental to like the success of our business.
Yeah.
We've been blessed in that regard. So that's been good. But we have had, like I said, we have had seasons where, you know, we've definitely needed to like cut back. So we've got our labor worksheet where we just kind of update our projected sales. And then we adjust our labor accordingly based on like an average dollar amount. We're just kind of like doing the math on like what can we afford to have, you know, how many people can we afford to have there based on their hourly rate and all that stuff. So that's kind of the main thing that we're doing. And the more like on top of it we can be on a regular basis in terms of, me sending out like a weekly report update email with this is our hourly labor for the past week and this is what our sales were at. So we can see what the trends were, over the last couple weeks and then a year ago, so we can kind of compare. And then it's just like a really quick snapshot of like, here's where we're at, and we're getting that information weekly, as opposed to not really paying attention to it and just kind of speculating, I think it's slower than it's been in a while or whatever. Then that's, if you don't do that stuff and stay on top of it, that's when I feel like you can become more reactive, which you don't want, because you're always going to be behind if you're just reacting.
That stuff being detailed tracking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And not that what we do is super detailed, but it's enough key information for us to just stay on top of it.
Yeah.
It works for us. And there's probably something we could be doing that would be better and make us more successful and more on top of it. And it's good to always be like refining those, how we do things. But it works. How we're doing it has worked and definitely helped, as opposed to just not doing it.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you do any sort of like tracking or, comparing to previous year, the same sort of thing to where you feel like it's helping you not be as reactive and more proactive?
Yeah, I track overall income and invoices year over year just to make sure, and I know where I'm at every month. I've got a cash flow forecaster too that I'm in that every single day. Mm-hmm. And so I'm plugging in any job that I've signed that I've got like future money coming in. I plug that in, and then any like recurring work with any of my subcontractors, like I have that coming in and all going out, and all my expenses and stuff. So I have a pretty good window. That's a 1 to 6 month snapshot though. Mm-hmm. So I can tell like, if I'm less than 3 or 4 months out, I really need to go get something, like we could have, a tough month coming up. But yeah, I don't do a ton of forecasting just because mine has been so up and down. It's really hard.
Is there any type of planning that like would work for your industry based on the fact that you don't really have employees right now, based on kind of what I have explained, how I approach it? Like, are there things that you could do that maybe look a little different that could just help you get in that mindset, or are you already doing those things? Basically?
Yeah, I'm already doing a lot of it. Because I have no employees, it's super easy for me to pivot for a day. I usually have in my mind when Halloween hits, stuff slows down a little, although it hasn't the last couple of years for me. Like last November and December, we're still crazy busy. People wanted to get drawings and stuff out. But typically when Halloween hits, I have in my mind, like, get a project done, like get something done by the end of the year that's not a client. Whether that's like I've got a PDF now on my website that I sell, or a project being like create a YouTube channel and start something like that, or start a podcast. Like I've always got in the back of my mind, okay, this is the time to dig in, create a new floor plan that I can sell, stuff like that. Where I know slower seasons, I can pull the trigger quick and get something out into the world that wasn't there before. That's usually how I pivot.
Do you feel like you would ever look into other areas within your industry or what you do to better capitalize if there was a season where home building slowed down? Like whether it's focusing more on remodels or anything like that has...
Yes. So there's one, consulting's always in the back of my mind. Online sales is always in the back of my mind, like selling resources for people that are building and not necessarily floor plans. And then, remodel. So there's one architect I work with, and I give him the lowest fees out of anybody I do, but he's just got such a great word of mouth reputation that he almost always has work. And so like I'm super trim on my number with him. Like he's also a great guy and really helps me with stuff. So it's great for me too, but I'm super trim with my number with him. I take really weird jobs that I normally wouldn't take. It's small remodels or additions that, 500 square feet here and there. But I keep that because he's going to be the most steady when things get bad, just because he's got just such a great reputation. And I've seen it too when things were down. He had more steady work.
Well, and the that mindset of like you've got the bulk amount of your work, which is designing homes, but having the mentality of like I can, for that sort of situation, like I can come down on my price, and I'm also peppering things in where I have guaranteed work where I'm not making as much money. It's kind of the same concept as like happy hour, or discounting heavily, where it's like that's not our bread and butter, but we're creating more regulars, we're adding to our additional business, and we're getting just our monthly sales or revenue up, which is going to help the bottom line and make sure and help ensure that we can cover our expenses. So having that mentality of just like peppering in those jobs, even though it's not your like what you make the most amount of money on, it's still like important to have those. Yeah,
I think when things, and it never really happened. Like I thought we were going to have a really ugly time when COVID hit and there's actually stuff closing down. Like, oh crap, they canceled the NBA play. I'm a sports guy, so like that's the lens I saw it through. I'm like, oh, they're actually canceling sports. Like this COVID thing might be real. So I thought we were gonna have a really slow, rough time, and it was only 3 or 4 weeks. I'm like, okay, pivot. What do I need to do? What do I need to get into? And I got into more like, okay, let's show 3D. People can't be out touring model homes, so let's offer 3D modeling as a service more, and like 3D interior walkthroughs. So I did one of those in that small downturn. So yeah, I'm always thinking about pivoting and stuff too. And part of it is I love like making and creating things. So it's just been the fabric of how I work is I'm gonna make stuff. So if you give me more time, I'm just gonna make more stuff. Mm-hmm. Instead of making stuff for clients, I'm gonna make stuff for me that I can sell and I can pivot. And so yeah, I think that's helped and probably will help me a ton down the road if things ever do get ugly. Is like, okay, I'm gonna figure something out here and figure out some way to make something that will sell.
Has it made you ever consider like should I diversify in any way? And I know it's easier said than done. Like if you have cash, you can buy a rental property or something like that.
Yeah.
Like not everyone has the ability to do that, but I guess just in general, in terms of like diversifying and not having all your eggs in like the home design.
Yeah, I think about that often. I haven't taken, other than the stuff I mentioned earlier, I haven't taken too many steps in that direction. But yeah, like I took a couple contractor licensing exams these last couple of years. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I can be a licensed contractor. I actually am in a couple of places. It wouldn't be crazy for me to build my own rental property, Airbnb or something. And I'm toying with doing something like that.
Yeah.
Like you say, just
and that's another thing too. It's to be successful in that, and then if you wanted to like contract on the side or do that regularly, it's like you'd have to have some sort of track record to get your clients.
Yeah.
So it's like how much of that do you want to really invest into like growing that? But the idea of diversification is like really, really good though, like because certain industries struggle in certain times,
But also it's like content like this, I think we're laying the groundwork for another potential revenue stream. Mm-hmm. We're not making any, we're probably losing a lot of money on it with all the gear and stuff we have right now.
I think with that though, it just goes back to like trying new things, when you put yourself out there and you're trying new things, not only are we learning from each other, like hopefully some people out there are learning something, have learned something from us, who knows, but like you never know what doors will be opened if you just like get out of your comfort zone a little bit and try something new. And that might be something like this, or it might be like an actual hobby. Like I've always wanted to try that, just like getting off the couch and doing something. I think whether it's work related or like I've always been interested in this hobby, I'm going to just go after it and learn something. Like you never know what could come from that. Maybe if it's golf, maybe you meet someone on the golf course that like, you know, that you end up partnering with, and like doors open that you never would have expected just by like trying something new.
Yeah. 100%. With the looming threat of things getting slow, and I don't go through this because, like we said, I don't have any employees. You've got a lot of employees. The looming threat of stuff like something could get slow, some downturn could come at some point. Does that force you to keep things lean? Like, is that always kind of in the back of your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to just keep talking about the labor thing, but like that is every time I send an email, like the weekly email, or we meet on Thursdays with the managers, like it always comes up. And sometimes it's more important than others, but the point is to like keep the managers focused on those things, you know, because if they get complacent in their job, they're just not going to be paying attention to it. So you almost want it to like to bring it up so much without being overkill that you're just kind of forcing them to think the way that you want them to think. So they're not just sitting in the office or going through the motions, because when you're working in, like if you're working in this restaurant all day, like it can be very easy to lose sight of certain things, you know, whether it's cleaning, you know, you're in this environment all day. So you might not notice like this corner of this wall is getting a little dirtier than, you know, than a different area. And like you just miss stuff, you know? So if I take that mentality of like reminding them and coaching them and like look for the details, make sure your patio is looking good for the summer months, and give them some like, you know, or like the light bulbs on the string lights on the patio are, you know, if one of them's burnt out or whatever, like it can be very easy for them to like overlook that stuff because they're just kind of focused on making sure the hot food's getting out and the servers are doing their job and just the function of like what we do, you know? So the more that I can remind them, even when it's not like detrimental, I feel like the better, you know? And it makes it less of a panic. Like if we weren't paying attention to it and then something happened and like all of a sudden we need to lay people off, it would feel, it might feel a lot more dramatic, you know, and more like just reacting off of emotion than like we've been planning. And the trends, this has been the trend over the last 3 months, and we're like slowly easing toward where we want to be. Yeah. You know, if you're not paying attention to it and you just react like we have to cut, like, you know, well, maybe things might change and you didn't react along the way. And now what if you lost a really good employee because you just reacted like emotionally in that moment? Yeah. You know, so the planning and just the ongoing dealing with that on a regular basis, I think puts you in a much stronger position when those hard times come. Yeah. How hard is it losing employees? Like, is that the last thing you would do to? Yeah, I'd never want to like fire someone or lay someone off. Yeah. You know, it's really a matter of like, if I'm forced to do it, it's really a matter of like, this person is really not fitting the culture, or they're toxic, or they don't get it. And I've tried to coach them. Like I've made some hires where managers or employees are like subpar, and I just have the mentality of I want to coach them along and try to make them be as good as they can be, and hope that, because I would much rather see that than like just throw in the towel on them and start over, because it takes a ton of time and energy to like hire a new person and start fresh and all that. You know, I'd rather, and everyone's growing. So, you know, everyone's trying to improve and be better. So I kind of view it as a challenge. And if we get to the point where it's like, okay, this person is just like causing so much angst within the restaurant and they're not respected by the support staff. And at some point you just have to make a move, you know, because you can't risk the health of the restaurant and losing other employees. And then you have no restaurant if you lose everyone because of a toxic leader. Yeah. It's really important to just consider that and like try to coach them along, but also like know when enough is enough. And so you have that side of it, and then the other side is just like the sales aren't there. I don't want, you know, you're always parting ways with like the weakest link, like the least valuable employee. Like if you have to lay off a cook, you're obviously going to lay off like your weaker employee. You know, you want the best people there, but you've had to do that over the years, but it's not like a normal occurrence. Yeah. Where it's like, who are we laying off today? How important is that reputation
for you guys. Like, does that get around in the industry a lot? Whether you're a company that holds on to people really long, or you're a company that's really quick to lay people off and lays off a ton of people when things get slow. Like, do those reputations get around in the staffing world?
I think a little bit. I think, some restaurants locally have, reputations of like that group or that restaurant owner might be difficult to work for, and maybe reacts a little bit more off emotion, and it can be a tough work environment.
Yeah.
Like that's just kind of what I've heard, like you just hear servers and cooks talk about like, I can't believe this person went there, like that won't last.
Yeah.
Those sort of comments. And it's all speculation because I don't really, deal with other restaurant owners or managers a whole lot, but you just hear things like that, and I would like to think we don't have that reputation. I don't really lead in that way, like fear-based or anything like that. And I prefer to hang on to people as long as I can, but and I think it makes our company a little bit more attractive because we're bigger, so having that mentality of like there could be more potential opportunity there because it's not just one restaurant or two restaurants. So not that I have the goal of growing a ton, but I'd like to think that there are certain things that we have in our company that make us more attractive, that help us get better people, because that's what I'd like to see. So who knows? But
have you ever had to close a place because it's not making money?
Yeah, we closed Burger House Carmel, Burger House Indianapolis. We kind of used COVID as the excuse, and that was part of it. I mean, that was a perfect storm of COVID, very difficult to find kitchen staff, depending on the location, because just because I mean we rely heavily on the Hispanic community, and like if you're not conveniently located to where that demographic tends to live in a market that you don't really understand, like Indianapolis, I don't live there.
Yeah.
Then you realize after the fact, like, oh, we can't get anyone from that community to commute 40 minutes up to Carmel.
Yeah.
And then the sales at both of those locations weren't great, so it's just kind of like, what are we doing? Let's focus back on let's learn from this mistake and take the L and move on. And then we closed the Dish, which is right across the street. We purchased that business, I think in like 2021, maybe. And then we initially wanted them to move into this space, and we asked the owner, like, would you do that? And she kind of said, like, I'm looking to retire. And that was at the time where we knew Lepeep was moving. We didn't know what we were going to do here. So
before you bought it, you asked if they wanted to move over here. You asked before you bought the Dish, you asked if they wanted to move.
Yeah.
over
Right.
Space.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yep. So that she wasn't interested. And then we ended up buying the business, and we didn't own the building, so we put money into it, but not as much as we would have if we owned the space.
Yeah.
Like we didn't. I wish we could have ripped out the carpet and put in like new flooring, and I didn't like that it was in a strip mall, and being like a fine dining place. Like there were just things that I didn't love about it. So we tried it for a couple years and couldn't really make it work. And at that time, we knew we were going to be able to move to Tony's downtown. And we at that time, we realized, all right, well, this is, if we're losing, a substantial amount of money every year here, or every month, let's close the doors and refresh and think about why it's not successful here, and change it enough to where we feel like we're in a really strong position when we open downtown, but while keeping some of the same elements of the Dish.
Yeah, you kept like their most popular dishes and stuff, and
the food that sold really well. A lot of the, not a ton. I mean, we weren't that busy, so we didn't have a ton of staff, but the staff that we did have that wanted to stay with us we've kept and
that's
still
cool.
work there. So you're able to make a lot of those same dishes the same ways and everything. Yeah. But yeah, it's a challenge to be put in that position, you know. And I feel like we're at a point here where it's like I need it to be busier, but we're at Lenny's specifically, you know, when we talk about like slower seasons, I feel like we're in a pretty good position at most of the restaurants, minus Lenny's. Like Lenny's is okay, but like it came at a time when like opening this place came at a time when we knew we were going to open here and then we were going to move to the next project. And that's just kind of the way like the hand was dealt, you know?
Yeah.
Like in a perfect world, we wouldn't have done that. Like, all right, we're going to open this restaurant this year and then this one the next year. Like that's a lot, you know? So we put a ton of focus into it right away. And then we kind of had to focus on downtown and take our focus off of here a little bit to the point where it's, you know, it's a very, intense, and just a lot of details to running a coal-fired pizza restaurant. And so we couldn't manage it as much as we wanted to, me and Zach. Zach focuses on the kitchens. And so we like adjusted our hours, you know, so we're only open for dinner. So we
had to be a little bit more hands-on because the recipe is more intricate, right?
Yeah.
Just
basically like managing the oven and stuff is like, it's not, you know, that's what makes it a little bit more complex. And then we had our kitchen manager at Le Peep. He kind of oversees things here, which helps. But long story short, we had to decide to basically like reduce our hours. So we're not open on Mondays, and then we're only open for dinner. And it's just really difficult to make money when you're open, you know, for 20 hours a week, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So now we're kind of, you know, we've got Birdie's pretty stabilized. It's basically what I'm saying is like, this is like kind of a primary focus when it comes to what do we do during those slow periods. So we're starting to like brainstorm a lot, you know, using experiences that I've had like like when I was in Sanibel, you know, going to different places that my kids really enjoyed, taking elements from why did they want to go back so much and bringing those ideas into here to make it to where kids want to come more. And in turn, the parents, you know, come and bring their money. So,
is there anything that stuck out to you of like,
some of the ideas, some of the things that we're doing, we want to, just little things like how we serve the kids meals. They have these vintage cars, like cardboard boxes, and they put the chicken tenders in there.
That's cool.
So like my kids still have their 2 boxes from the time we went to this cheeseburger place in Florida on their dresser, you know? It's like a cheap little 50-cent thing, but they kept it and they wanted to go back because of that. And they wanted to go back because there was a massive gumball machine that when you put in a quarter, 6 gumballs come out. I don't know if we could fit something that size in here, but like at least having a gumball machine, maybe we're talking about taking out that area up front, the waiting area, and putting in like a pinball machine and some games. So like when kids, it just makes kids want to come back, you know, like those are the ideas we're coming up with right now.
It's such a like small little, almost dumb idea. Like you wouldn't think this coal-fired pizza place needs a gumball machine. You know, that'd be the last thing I think of.
Right.
But when you say it, it makes total sense. Like I've got kids. Those are the dumb little reasons kids want to go back to a place. Like don't miss those.
It's kind of one of the few restaurants we have where like that sort of stuff, like pinball machines and all that, like especially if it's vintage, it could fit. You know, like I wouldn't do that at like Burger House or you know, Birdie's or whatever.
Yeah, but if you put an '80s arcade game in here, it would feel perfect.
Yeah. That's kind of the thought. So we're just trying to make sure we have the right space, but we're just kind of constantly coming up with new ideas and trying to make the experience that much better to hopefully increase sales. So you have that, you have the marketing, you want to make sure your labor's in line and your food cost is good, but like you just have to approach it from a ton of different angles, you know?
Yeah. So I do a lot of brainstorming when things are slow too. I had one a couple of years ago. It's a dumb idea that didn't work, but I think the example is like you're saying, you got to try stuff. So I love birds. And this is when AI was really big too, and like just coming out. So I got an AI subscription and then an AI upscaler. And I'm like, I'm going to make like geometric prints of birds with AI and then try and sell the digital copy on Etsy for like $2 or $3. I never sold a one. I made like 3 or 4. But
it's a unique idea. I can't think of, I've heard anything like that, you know? So
yeah,
you came up with something unique.
It totally branched off of, but like, I feel like I learned some stuff about Etsy in there. I learned about, AI upscaling and what that can be. Like, I don't think there's any way to actually lose money in business if you're willing to learn from stuff. I've said this before, but like, I don't know, just try stuff, even if it seems really dumb.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going to hit and what's not.
Yeah.
Till you get it out there.
Whenever I think of the bald eagle, I think of you. And
I love.
I never
that so
thought of you
much.
as like a bird guy, but I thought of you as a bald eagle guy.
Awesome, best compliment. Yeah, is your brain ever shutting off? Like, how panicked do you get when you hear word that things get slow?
I can get panicked just like anyone else. My brain, I don't know. My brain doesn't like fully shut off. There's just so much there's so many texts to get back to and so many things I want to work on. And then, I like to fill any like downtime with family or hobbies, so, I wouldn't say I really like get bored a whole lot.
Yeah.
But, when you're doing that planning and it comes to like the implementation, now it's like, okay, are we going to go through with this? Because I got to get all those chairs out of here, go buy the games and, make that change, which like maybe sounds kind of easy, to get a pinball machine in here or whatever, just order the stuff. But like just the logistics, even if it is kind of simple, it's like you have just the follow through with that stuff. Like it's one thing to have ideas and come up with something like, oh, that's creative. But just like with you in the bird example, it's like, okay, well, are you going to like buy the equipment that you need to do it and the paper and all, like it's the actual implementation. Sometimes as simple as it may be, it's just kind of like, do I want to deal with that? Do I want to do that?
And I bet I'm busy enough now where I don't need to keep pursuing the bird angle, but I bet my execution on the bird stuff, the implementation was just a little bit off. And I bet I probably could have made some money off of it had I done stuff right. Like, I don't know, maybe I needed to offer physical prints, and sell them for more money. Or maybe I just didn't have enough uploaded. And, I bet I was just really close on one factor that was off and I didn't spend enough time on it to really dial it in. But I think you can get anything to work if the implementation is right.
Yeah. It's just a matter of how much time and energy do you want to invest in that thing? And is it fun for you? Like the content creation you've enjoyed that.
Yeah.
So even if you're not making money, it's like, well, just the chase has been fun for you, the idea of that.
Yeah.
Success.
I think that's the ultimate hack for my business is because I enjoyed content creation. I got kind of good at it just because I did it a bunch, and now we don't have a ton of plays on these episodes yet, but I'm learning something from it. I'm enjoying it. Like it's easy for me to keep doing this.
Yeah. Making it as simple as possible and putting your energy and time into something that at least is rewarding to you and brings you, enjoyment. Because there's endless amounts of things that we can be doing that are different from what, our normal day job is.
Yeah.
And, but a lot of times that doesn't really like bring any sort of value. And it's just like, what are we doing?
Yeah. I think as a business owner, if you force yourself to do stuff you don't like, it's really, really hard to sustain it. And that's what's kept, like, I like doing this. That's why it's easy to do content for 5 years.
Yeah. What was it like in your old job? Like, what was it like when you were in Minnesota and you were entering a season that was going to be a little bit slower, or your boss was telling you, like things are going to look a little tight? What would that look like there?
Yeah, it was, there was talk like nobody's getting bonuses. We're not doing well this year. Like bonuses are going to be hard to come by. Like having conversations like that with the team. They too were reluctant to lay people off, which I think like is a good business for good business model. And then we did a lot of upkeep as a CAD team with a home builder. We had 50 some plans that all had detailed drawings and stuff. And so if stuff's going to get slow, let's get our plans as perfect as they can be, not, make the little excuses for the little bits and bobs of the plan set that are wrong, but really dial them in. We did a lot of value engineering at that time too. We would bring in HVAC contractors and the lumber company and like, how can we take money out of this floor plan without sacrificing, really what makes the plan great. And so I had a lot of conversations like that. Like, and when you're slow, you have time to adjust the plans and do all those meetings and stuff. It's hard when things are going well. But yeah, we did a lot of that. We had one year where we made like, I think it was not a lot, like 1%, which if you're building 150 homes, that's so much work for not a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like ultimately it's enough where you can keep the doors open, but it's also, you got to fix something if you're there. And so that's when things really started to, rubber meets the road kind of conversations.
Yeah, I think it's really important to just like stay organized during those times. Yeah. Because you can, it's important to focus on marketing. Like what are the things we need to resolve, the issues we need to resolve, and a lot of times it's sales, so seeing it as a challenge of like, all right, we're entering a slow period where maybe a lot of restaurants are struggling. So what can we do to be different, and whether it's setting aside time of like, for a couple hours every Monday or whatever, like I'm going to work on just marketing ideas, and then come back to it the following week. So it's one thing to just kind of brainstorm like, oh, sales are bad, I need to like come up with an idea and just brainstorm on the spot. But like having, organized time of like focused on marketing ideas, and then, that's just one area, but like being diligent with how you spend your time to be effective with, not just coming up with the ideas, but like the implementation of those, and having just like a really organized plan. I mean, I could always be better at that, but the idea of that sounds really good. Yeah.
I think like ideas are super easy. The implementation is hard. Like that's what separates, like I look back at, we talked last week on social media. I look back at like MySpace and Facebook. They're basically the same thing, but Facebook took off because it was implemented better. It was a cleaner, more attractive system that worked better.
Yeah.
And they just had a few of the kinks ironed out, and it's now one of the biggest companies on the planet. Right. And MySpace doesn't exist. Like I think if you can, you should always be brainstorming. If you're a business owner and you're not brainstorming, like I can't fathom doing that.
Yeah.
But if your brainstorming isn't also married with implementation, you're just wasting your time.
Mm-hmm. What does this next year look like for you? Like, what do you think you'll struggle with just getting the amount of revenue dollars that you need? And has this been like a fresh topic for you? Have you been thinking a lot about this, or
no? I'm not slow. I'm like the opposite of slow right now.
Yeah.
I think it was October or November was one of the biggest months I ever had invoice wise. I think, not to get political, but because of the election and people not just stuff being up in the air, people are like, oh, I want to get my home bid and built quick because things might change. So I got a lot of calls to finish up drawings. And my biggest invoice is always at the end when I, give them the build ready set. So I got a lot of calls for people to get that done and get it out the door. And then, I thought that would be like, okay, that was a wave and things will slow down now. And it just hasn't. So I'm like, it's also, I have to fight for the things that I know will help me when I'm slow, even when things are busy. It's almost like coming at it from the complete other side, but we both probably have stuff to do. I have plenty of drawings that need done. Like I could be doing that right now, but I'm fighting for this and carving out this time to do this podcast because I think this is going to be another avenue that helps me down the road. Right. I don't know exactly what it looks like and how it's going to help, but I'm confident enough in it that it's going to help sometime.
Yeah.
So yeah, even when things are busy and crazy, I'm still like, keep things trim, keep things light, don't hire someone.
Yeah.
And fight for stuff, get the branches out, get the feelers out for stuff that could help you in the future when stuff does get slow.
And if you don't have the desire to scale and you can make money based on how much business you've been getting, I kind of lean towards that now. It's like I wish I could simplify things more, and make things like less chaotic or deal with less personalities. So some people aren't wired that way and they just want to continue to see growth, but there comes a cost with that too, whether it's time or whatever.
For sure.
So I think, you've been able to find a good rhythm where like you can manage it well, how much money you're going to make doing that. And as long as things stay consistent, you should be good, and you have the time to do, to spend with your family, have fun with your hobbies, work on some other things. And that's kind of like the sweet spot,
Yeah, for sure. The toughest thing for me is saying no when things are busy. I'm like, I know I don't have a ton of time in my schedule right now, but I don't know, especially, I mean, you feel this too, but you never know when the next job is coming. Mm-hmm. And so like I could say no to that one and that could be the last call I get for 3 months. Like that thought is always the back of my mind. Like at some point, I just have to trust God and like, he's going to provide for my family and he always has. Yeah. And so saying no when I'm busy and knowing what's on my plate, but that's been harder to do than to say.
Yeah. We'll occasionally have like on that point, like we'll have requests for catering or private events, and it can be difficult to turn those down, and we have been accepting them more so lately. But there's so much extra work and extra capacity needed when it comes to like doing those, because you're coming up with a new menu and you've set your kitchen up for success for that day to handle the normal business on the line. And so now you're taking on these extra things with the thought of like, well, maybe in 2 months when we have this party, like things might be slower because of, some of the stuff we've been talking about today, so you accept these things and you go through them. It's just, there's an extra level of stress because like, what if in the 2 months from now until when that event takes place, like what if you lose some key people and it's going to be that much harder to execute on that. And it's so much easier to just plan for that day and have normal operations, but like you don't want to give up on sales, especially if it's like a $3,000 catering order,
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, I think, it's always changing. It's always, it's fluid and you don't want your fear and your emotions to get the best of you, but like, do what you can to control the things that you can and fight to live another day.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. If you have anything that you do when times are slow and anything that we missed, drop it in the comments. Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Yeah, I think that wraps it up for this week.
Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe. We'll see you next time.
See ya.